Susan, congratulations! Thanks for joining us today, and here's your the William Rule Award.
Oh, thank you. Cool.
For achievement in history.
Love that.
Has a great image of, and we're really lucky that Lloyd Branson made this wonderful painting. He was proud of it. Made several different versions of it over the years, and this is a very colorful version of hauling marble with in the old days when they did it with very strong horses.
And he won the gold medal at the Appalachian Expo for this painting.
Yeah.
And it was something so, this is the modern world. This is, 1910?
Yeah, yeah.
But look what he's showing. He's showing old-timey Knoxville hard labor. And I think that was something, he was reaching back to what the French Barbizon school artists did, to make something that was an academic work to show his pride in where he came from, and he won the gold medal. So.
Yeah, and his career kind of stretched back to that era, and in fact, I think he did an early version of this in the late 1800s, and he was still working on it, and improving it.
Right, and there's some up in, I guess, Union County, where he was born. They would look at this and say, well, that's Union County, and we would say, well, that's probably West Knox County.
Yeah. Well, tell us about something about yourself for people who don't know. How did you get into this? You're a historian first, but you came into marble as a subject and became connected to it. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Arlington, Virginia. My father was a lawyer in the Army, so we moved around a little bit, but usually mostly at the Pentagon. But my mother's side family is many generations back, East Tennessee. So I had grown up coming down. By this time my grandparents had a farm in Middle Tennessee, almost on the Kentucky border. But I'd grown up in Washington, and I knew nothing about this history, although I realized much, much later that I'd been seeing this marble in Washington. But the way I kind of backed into this was I was doing my background is art history and librarianship. I have a library degree from way, way back before it was information science. And I was living in Nashville, I was asked to do some research on the Davidson County Courthouse, another federal project of the 1930s when it was being remodeled. And there are some beautiful murals in there by Dean Cornwell, and I thought, well, this is what they want me to learn about. And so I started looking, and there are carved glass panels in that building that are on the theme of the lawgivers. There are bronze doors. It's really quite a beautiful building and has a whole architectural program, which was very common in that time period. So as I'm researching this, I'm finding that several of these artists not only had connections to Rockefeller Center, which was being built in New York at exactly the same time, and the consulting architect in New York, Frederick Hirons, was involved with the Davidson County Courthouse, but they also had some connection to the U.S. Capitol. And that's such a prestigious thing that any artist who's had work connected to the U.S. Capitol is going to put it on their resume, or it's going to be in their bio. So I ended up applying for a fellowship to go to the U.S. Capitol. They have a program where you can go and work in the curator of the Capitol's office and do research on a topic, and if you apply and get one of these awards, then you can go do that. So I went up there thinking I was going to look at our sculpture in Statuary Hall, both of whom, John Sevier and Andrew Jackson, are big bronze sculptures done in the 1920s by a woman artist, Belle Kinney Schultz from Nashville. And I thought, and these then connections to the Davidson County Courthouse, cast glass by David Harriton and bronze doors by Renee Chambellon. But the day I got there, the curator said, well, now, what we're really interested in is the Tennessee marble in this building. And I thought, it's the U.S. Capitol. They have archives going back to the beginning. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to follow this thread, see what I can learn, take what I find that has to do with the Capitol back to Tennessee, go to the state library, see, what there is, see what's in the archives, if there's any connection to any of this. And that's what got me started.
Yeah, yes, fascinating. I guess you were more familiar with DC to begin with as a kid. You'd seen these buildings.
I've been in the National Gallery of Art many times. I mean, it's a, light, slightly off-white building. Looks white in the bright daylight, just like KMA can look almost white in the bright daylight, and then it rains on it and you see the pink.
Yeah. Well, I think you're proof that history is really the study of everything, because people who may not be familiar with how everything's connected. I guess everyone should be, but think of geology and history as completely different things. But you have to learn a lot about geology to be able to write about history, especially in terms of the marble business, which became a major kind of issue, a major factor in American architecture.
Well, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what most of the published works, when I started into this, and this was 2004, 2005, were in geological publications, like the bulletin that you mentioned, that 1924 bulletin by Dr. Charles Gordon, who was head of the geology department here at UT. In 1921, he went around and talked to the quarry owners for businesses that were still open, and that's what that map that was in the film, we took his 1921 survey and overlaid it on contemporary geography, and that's in the GIS lab at MTSU. One of the amazing things you can do now with this technology. Yeah. But there were at one time over 50 quarries here, but they come and go, they change names. I mean, I have a long database of, when these opened and closed and the name was changed and who was if you ever can find a person's name, you put that person in another field and wait for them to reappear with another one, because a lot of the people, and many of you in this room probably have connections to some of those people. But one thing I want to mention about the geology, and that is that Dr. Don Byerly, who was a professor of geology at University of Tennessee, now passed away a few years ago, but he was a great partner in this, as was Pete Lemisky, who's the East Tennessee State Geologist, and Ron Zarowski, who is the Tennessee State Geologist in Nashville. And they were all quite interested and said, oh, you can come anytime, look through our files, anything you can. And I needed their help to interpret a lot of that. But Don Byerly's idea was we could nominate Tennessee marble to be an international heritage stone. And what that meant was he and I went to the American Geological Society conference, which is enormous, and a lot of people come from all over, and they give you 20-minute slots to make your presentation. So he and I 10 minutes on the history, 10 minutes on the geology, and so we presented several times, and then we wrote a paper together. So as a historian, I never could have done this. And Don was great. He was a good friend of Finbar Saunders, introduced me to him. His also Barksdale Jones, Finbar's cousin, and his wife Sonia, they were all great friends of Don and Sue Byerly. And so all this, these one connections. But we did finally get this designation. So we were the first U.S. stone to be among the 55 included. And I want to thank very much the Tennessee Marble Company, Monica Gowett, the president is here, because they furnished samples of the marble to these two museums in Europe. So this now, as part of this whole international heritage stone, there's a museum at Trinity College Dublin, and there's a museum in Berlin of building materials from all over the world. And then, if I can get this open, I'll show you our page. pages. But maybe you can see from back there, Ramsey House, as was mentioned in the film, and then on the other page are samples that the Tennessee Marble Company shows in their brochures of the different, many people have asked about the different colors, and it's minerals, obviously. And then here's a recent project showing that this is, not only historical, but still in use. This is a Bloomberg Center in Washington, D.C., really down, you can see the Capitol in it. So, but anyway, thank you to all who contributed to that, but a special shout out to Don Byerly, who really helped us with the exhibit at the Museum of East Tennessee History that Adam Alfrey, who's also here, and Steve Cottam and I worked on together.
Yeah. I was going to mention that. I think that was a turning point. Rock of Ages. It was the best name for an exhibit at ETHS History, I think. But that was in 2017, I think.
Yes.
I think before that exhibit, a lot of people had a vague idea that marble was part of the heritage of the economic heritage of this area, but it wasn't being quarried much anymore. And I guess there are several factors. It's expensive, and people just aren't using it as much.
Well, Monica could address that. I think she and her company have single-handedly pretty much come back around and done renovations where they needed to come back to the source, and then done many other new projects. And I'm really so proud of what they've done, and thrilled
it's great that
that
still
this
there.
is still available.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So much of our history is kind of vague that people have forgotten it. I remember one time working for Metropole, so I thought, what is Cedar Bluff named for? I've never seen a cedar. It sounds like there's a bluff with cedar trees on top or something like that. And I realized that that's a marble term, and the bluff was underground, and it was cedar marble, and there's part of it you can still see there between all the fast food stuff.
And when I started into this, I mean, Jack was on it. Bits and pieces. He's writing these pieces in these various publications where, the Cedar Bluff one in particular, I remember.
Yeah.
And so it takes us all.
Yeah. Well, it's great the work you've done, and you've done so many things. It's amazing looking at your career. You've written a few tour guides over the years, haven't you? And you've been involved in the Tennessee Holocaust Commission. You were a librarian. You were a head librarian in Sevier County for some time.
A few years.
Yeah. That I didn't know that until we did research for this. You're so modest. But you've done curatorial work at Cheekwood, the museum in Nashville, well-known art museum. But a historian can do almost anything, right? Is that what you're trying to prove? Yeah.
The combined, the librarianship, the research side, and then the material culture study, and that's really what this is. It's public history and material culture, because where humans interact with natural materials, that's exactly, what this is, and that's what people leave.
Yeah.
And when we did the exhibition, Rock of Ages, at the East Tennessee History Center, prior to that, we had public meetings. Paul James, I'm really grateful to Paul, because without his help when he was at Imes Nature Center, we wouldn't have been able to do the National Register nominations there. Yeah. But we also did a public meeting there, and people whose family members, grandfathers, uncles, fathers had worked in the industry came and brought things to show us, time cards and little ashtrays and lamps that they made. And we did also a session at the East Tennessee History Center, and a whole different group of things, including Harmon Kress, who's had written a whole family history, including that the story of that tombstone and the famous driver. And then we also did one in Friendsville at the City Hall. And so people who had retired but who had worked out in Friendsville came, or their family members came. And there's a lot more to this, really. The more you continue to work on it, and I'm still working on it, and I would welcome help from anyone who has connections with people who worked in the industry, in any respect, draftsman or designer or skilled worker, or know of people who did. Because I think those stories are still stories that are exciting to learn and bring out and include in the larger history.
Yeah. Well, I agree, Susan, and I'm grateful for what you've done, and you're well deserving of our recognition today. And congratulations again.
Thank you so much.